Hi everybody, welcome back to another devlog of Spell Hunt, an indie game I've been working on for almost a year now, and this time I want to take a bit of time to talk about some changes I made to the UI, how I added badges to my game, how I added super moves to my game, and I want to take some time to talk about where I want to take this game in the future. The first thing I tackled was fixing how everything looked on screen. You see, I've always had an issue with the player and other elements appearing too squashed, and this is something that's been pointed out by friends and playtesters as well. So, to address this, I followed a tutorial to learn about the different methods to scale the GUI layer, so that it could adapt to various screen sizes and aspect ratios on different devices. And so after some adjustments, I managed to make the players and other things look less compact on screen. However, this came with a few issues that needed further tweaking. You see, with this new fix, everything on the GUI layer was messed up. Things were tinier, things weren't where they were supposed to be, and something as simple as pressing and hovering over options wasn't working either. And the reason why everything was so messed up was because when I positioned certain elements, such as text and sprites, I was using magic numbers to determine where things should be in the GUI. Instead, what I should have been doing was positioning them relative to the GUI width and height, so that they would stay in the same place if the GUI were to change. But since I didn't, I had a bunch of fixing to do. And this took me well over half a day to get done, but I finally got it finished. And while I was at it, I made some changes to certain things, such as the inventory UI, the bounty UI, where you get to choose what bounty you tackle next. And while I was at it, I also finally added the badge UI, where you would finally be able to hold on to badges and be able to select the badge you would take into a stage with you to get certain stats. But badges themselves weren't implemented yet, so I started to get working on that. First thing to tackle was actually being able to add badges to your inventory. And at this point in time, I couldn't really come up with a creative way to actually get badges in there. But for a while, I did have this separate currency that wasn't being used for anything. So I decided that for now, I would make it so you would buy these badges like you would with items. It is a boring approach for sure, but it could be expanded to have other ways to get these badges, like maybe completing a quest or doing a secret side mission. There are so many things I could do with this, and if you have ideas for ways to get these badges, let me know. Also, you would only be able to take 3 badges with you to a level, so that you don't take all your badges with you at once and just become unbelievably broken. Next up was actually making badges, and giving them effects while equipped. I started off with 5, those 5 being an attack buff, starting off with 3 additional shields, more invincibility frames, a double jump, and lastly, a badge that would increase your movement speed. So far, pretty basic badges, and I was about to add more, but then I got sidetracked with the idea of adding something else with the badges, that being super moves. You see, I like the idea of super moves in video games, something like the screen nukes in Mega Man or the screen nukes in Kirby. They're pretty nice to pull off, especially when you are able to take out a bunch of enemies at once, allowing you to save a bit of time. And so I wanted to try doing something like that with my game. And so far, I made 2 different types of super moves. One is a basic super move where stars crash down from above, hitting all enemies below. And the other one was something of an electric type attack, where you get surrounded with a thunder barrier, and lightning strikes would strike any nearby enemies. These are super cool, and I can't wait to make more of them, but it's undecided whether I'll stick with these, or just have regular badge boosts. Why don't you guys decide? I could go either way with this. And the last thing I want to talk about is something that's very important in my eyes, and that is the direction in which I should take my game. I'm having the player go on so many quests to do what is essentially the same thing over and over. You head to a level, do some tasks, and maybe fight a boss, and then rinse and repeat. And so far, you're doing this 7 times just to get through the first world, and each level can have 2 or more floors each. And if you're not rushing to get to the end of a floor, you're gonna get bored very quickly fighting all these enemies. Not to mention, you're doing this for 5 worlds total. And this leads back to something I've been trying to avoid since the very start of development. How do I make these levels not seem repetitive? And I've done so many things to try and fix it, adding enemy variety, task variety, making some levels harder than others, but no matter what I do, I can't shake off the feeling that things will get repetitive. Something I could do is actually design my levels by hand and give them unique mechanics and obstacles, but I'm terrible with level design and I felt like I wouldn't be able to do it justice. But I do have an idea that I want you guys to hear, and I want to hear your thoughts on it. So here's the idea. Basically, there would be a dungeon that consists of 4 different floors, and at the end of each floor, there would be a boss fight. And if you perish at any point, you'd go back to the first floor. So it's basically a roguelike, but it makes it so that you only have to go through 4 floors to beat a world, rather than the 7 different levels you would have to go through. And I could keep my level system so that if you die, you have a chance to gain enough experience points to level up and come back stronger, so that you would eventually be able to be strong enough to beat every floor with sheer power alone. And once you beat the tower, you'd go to the next world, where you would do the process all over again. But don't worry, if you die in a dungeon in the next world, you would not be forced to go back to the first world, you would just have to redo the second dungeon again. I could also make it so that outside the tower you can still do side quests, and that the benefits of the side quests could lead to changes in the dungeon that would make it easier. For example, maybe saving the missing shopkeeper could allow them to show up in the dungeon and provide you with additional items, or hurting some pigs would allow you to have your own pig partner that would help in defeating enemies. However, something that would need to change would be how I handle weapons. Usually in a roguelite, you don't get to keep your weapons if you perish, and you get weapons as you traverse the level. So maybe I can make it so that you only have one weapon that you can upgrade by defeating enemies, kinda like how it's done in the Cave Story. And throughout the dungeon, you could have access to a multitude of spells that would no longer be tied to a weapon anymore. Of course, this means you would only be able to bring one weapon to a dungeon, but at least you can choose which weapon you want to bring with you. And that's my idea for how I could go forward with this game. Let me know what you think of this idea, or if you have different ideas as to how I could improve things, because I could really use some input right now, because like I said, this is a very important part of the game. And that's all I have to talk about this time. I didn't get much done as I hoped to, but like I said, I was busy trying to think of the best direction this game should go in, and I didn't want to add anything new that I would have to get rid of. This game is taking a bit longer than I expected to get out, and I apologize for not having a new demo out in a while. And to make things worse, this game has been a bit draining to work on, honestly. I don't want to drop it, but I want to make some new games from time to time, so I have an idea. Recently I've been watching shorts from Danum Studios where he's been making a game based off the suggestions of people's in the comments, and that's something interesting I want to try out. Of course, this can only be done if we get enough people in this little community to give ideas, so let me know if you want me to try this out. But that's all for me this time. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and let me know your suggestions down below. Bye.